And hello, Savannah. That was The Cure with Friday I'm in Love. It's not Friday yet, but I'm sure there's lots of people out there today in love. It's Valentine's Day. What a song for you all to start my hour here. That song is actually from 1992, the year before I came here to this wonderful country. Welcome to my show. You have just tuned into Real Estate Real Talk with Julia M. Spencer, myself. And before I get started, just wanted to let you know that the viewpoints expressed in the following program are not necessarily those of WRUU, its license holder, or its staff. I have a lot of opinions, so I make sure I read that every time I come into the studio here. You are listening to WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. I'm so glad that you're here. And today, we're going to be talking real estate. I am a local real estate investor. I've been in the business for many decades, over 25 years actually. And in this show, we talk about anything and everything related to real estate and real estate investing specifically. And today's show, I want to talk a little bit about, drumroll, property management. Woo! We're going to try to make it interesting, though, I promise. So first things first, let's talk about my very first experience as a property manager. This is going to be a really funny story for you, actually. My very first tenant, actually, and her name, I can't remember her first name, but I do remember her last name. Her last name was Heller, and she lived in one of my houses in Crestview, Florida, my first house, actually, and she was my very first tenant, and I decided to manage the property myself. The property managers I've spoken to, and this is actually still common practice, charge about 10% to manage a property, and I thought, I'm going to save my 10%, and I'm not going to hire anybody to do that for me. I'm going to do it myself. And the first time I meet Mrs. Heller, she moved in there, elderly lady, with her mentally disabled son in his 40s or so. So the two of them were going to live there together. And this is how she introduced me. She said to me, "Julia, you will always remember me. And you will always remember my name." And to this day, I haven't forgotten the name. She said, "It's Heller. It's a higher version of hell." And I thought, well, this is a very good introduction to being a landlord and owner, and she's my tenant, and her name is Heller. That's not going to go very good. I got goosebumps already. I was getting scared here. But she turned out to be a really good tenant, and over the years I've had a lot of good and also some bad tenants, and I had also a lot of good and bad property managers. And in the process, I learned lots of stuff. And that's really all I could say is stuff. So, so we're going to talk about some of that stuff today. And I actually was preparing this show last night on my sofa watching TV, and I was thinking, okay, who was actually my first property manager? And Kevin, if you're listening in Warner Robins, Georgia, this is out to you. I definitely had some experiences with some good and bad property managers over the years. And property management is just key to your investment, and it will definitely make or break your RE career and investments. If you have a good one, you're good to go. If you have a bad one, well, sorry for you, you're kind of screwed. So what I'm going to do with the show is I'm going to play you some sections of one of my YouTube videos that I made on some of the most important two things that, in my opinion, are the things that will break or make your real estate investment career, or whether or not you're going to make money on your real estate property. And then we're going to talk about some of the tips that I've learned, some old and some new, at a recent real estate conference that I went to in San Diego, California. You probably heard me talk about that a couple of times on some previous shows that I went to the end of January. But basically, it was an RE conference I attended it was basically held by the masters in the trade. It's basically a bunch of people that got together, like myself, that want to learn, landlords, and a bunch of masters that have been doing it for a long time. I guess I belong to both categories, the master and the learner. And I've learned a lot of tips that I never heard before in terms of property management. So I wanted to make a show about this to let you all know about what I've learned. And some of them made a lot of sense and they were very interesting. And I think you can benefit from them if you're an owner, a landlord, or even if you're just a property manager managing properties for other people. So with that, my goal is to make you smarter property manager if you're doing it for yourself or others, or maybe just an informed owner or user of property management services. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to play a quick song here. And by the way, happy Valentine's Day, everyone. All my songs are love songs today. I just love Valentine's Day. And I hope you're in love out there and get ready with your candy and your flowers. I've seen people walking outside with flower bunches. It's just an amazing time of the year. And I'm going to play the song for you. I'm going to get that video ready for you, and we're going to listen to it. And hopefully I can get the boards here working just right for you. And I will be right back after this. And that was some Depeche Mode for you. Just Can't Get Enough. One of my favorite songs, by the way. And we're going to play love songs for you today and talk about real estate as announced on my Facebook. This video that I'm going to play for you, or part of it anyways, is actually on YouTube. It's called Avoid These 2 Mistakes If You Are a New Landlord. But the basis of why I'm playing this today is basically the 2 things that are, in my opinion, the things that will break your investment if you have real estate. And we're talking about that today. We're talking about property management and some of the things that you should do as a property manager or as an owner or a landlord. And before we get to some of the tips that I've collected over the years and recently at a real estate conference, I wanted to play this video and tell you some of the things that could happen, some of the things that I've experienced over my career of being a landlord for many years. And that will help you understand why property management is actually so important. So let's see if I can get this going here. Just a moment. Here we go. Nothing's playing, so just a moment here. Let's see if we can get it going some other way here. Trying to get it going here. Let's see again. Okay, so apparently my video is not starting. Let's see. All right, well, you know what? I can just tell you about it because I've been there and done that. So the 2 mistakes that you need to absolutely avoid if you're a new landlord, and this is kind of what I was talking about in this video here actually, is the first thing is tenant turnover. That's probably the biggest problem that I've had over the years. And unless you have a vacation property and it's set up for frequent turnovers and it's a furnished place and you provide all the utilities and all that stuff, that's kind of like really normal for that kind of setup. But if you have long-term tenancy, long-term rental, and it turns over, let's say every 6 months or every year, then that's actually really bad, because what you'll have to do each time that a tenant leaves and a new one comes, you likely will have to do some major cleaning. You'll have to do some remodeling, some repainting. A lot of times what I've experienced, and this is my bad, when I started as a real estate investor, I had a lot of carpet in all of my properties. I had to replace the carpet. I mean, I got smart in the end and got rid of all the carpet. And by the way, that's one of my first tips I'm going to give you. But tenant turnover is one of the things that will kill most of your profit. Not only the fact that you'll have to basically freshen up your place between tenants, and it's usually much more significant than maybe a vacation rental turnover when people are staying only for a few days or so. With long-term tenants, you have significantly more work to do because they've been there longer and they had more time, and here's quote unquote to mess things up. And believe it, they will mess things up. I mean, I've had many years, I had good property managers, I had bad property managers. I was in the beginning a bad property manager myself. Then I became a really good property manager because I learned my lessons, and still I could never really quite 100% predict which tenant was going to take care of my place and which one's going to trash it. So there is, of course, a couple guidelines. And by the way, since I can't play this video for you right now, you can actually go you can go on YouTube for more information. Just watch it yourself. It's free. Avoid these 2 mistakes if you're a new landlord. There's a bunch of discussion that actually happened when I put that video up. Just got like over 7,000 views. And people were just going back and forth. Okay, this is how you check a tenant. You got to have this credit score, and you got to have certain kind of credit history, and you have to call the tenants, and you have to call the references. Those are all good things, but there's really not one set of guidelines that I can recommend to you as Savannah listeners here today on what you should do in order to get a good tenant. I would definitely recommend, though, if you're starting off, don't try to waste your time on saving those 10% that you would normally spend for a property manager. Go ahead and get one. It will definitely save you in the long run. Kind of get involved with that property manager and work with them and see what they're doing, but don't do this on your own to start with, because it's going to be very difficult. So the other thing that I did mention in the video is not just the turn and turnover, but we kind of mentioned it a little bit, which is the fact that a lot of tenants actually mess up your place. And I'm not talking about normal everyday use type things that they can do to your property, and a lot of people that maybe are not as cleanly as other tenants, but a lot of people actually do some significant damage to properties, and it's kind of sad that happens, because we have, of course, a lot of different money that we have to spend to get everything spruced up. So these 2 things are the reason why you have to have good property managers. And it looks like I now finally figured out how to play this video here for you. And I'm sorry for babbling on. I'm just going to go ahead and play it, because it's actually quite interesting to listen to from the beginning. And we have a few comments here in that video that I haven't mentioned yet. But I'm going to just go ahead and play it for you and see if we can gather some more information about why property management is important. And that'll get us at the bottom of the hour. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and do some housekeeping first before I go ahead and play this, because we are already at 12:30. We got started a little bit late today. And hopefully, let me just play you some of this information here first and see if we can get that going.
Park Place Outreach is an emergency shelter that provides services for youth who are homeless, runaway, or victims of abuse, and is the only facility in Chatham County to which children can self-report without a family or agency referral. The program also provides a street outreach program to identify and help at-risk youth. If you need help, know someone at risk of becoming a runaway, or would like more information, call 912-234-4048 or visit parkplaceyes.org.
WRUU brings you the most diverse and passionate local radio programming on the air in Savannah. This all-volunteer and nonprofit community radio station accepts no money from any form of government. Our diversity and independence is made possible only through the generous financial support of listeners like you. We rely on your annual and ongoing monthly contributions to cover the many costs associated with bringing you our broadcasts and web programming. If you are a contributor, thank you. If you are not yet a contributor, please show your appreciation of the role WRUU plays in your life by becoming a contributor in any amount. You can donate quickly and easily by credit card or check. You just find the donate and subscribe links at WRUU.org. Thanks for listening to and supporting WRUU.
And welcome back to Real Estate Real Talk with Julia M. Spencer. And I'm going to play a little bit of a video that talks about why it is important to have property managers that support your property investments for you. Here it goes. Is something about very close and very dear to my heart, which is giving you a very, very important tip if you're a brand new landlord, if you're the first time renting your property to somebody else. Some of the things that brand new landlords just do not know, and unfortunately most of the time don't learn this without the very due course of time. But I'm going to tell you some really important tips here, and please take those to heart. If you're a new landlord, if you're planning for the first time to rent out your property to somebody else, there are two things about being a landlord. And let me tell you where I get this from. I've actually been a landlord for probably about 19 years now. It's actually unimaginable that it's been that long, but I have been a landlord that long, so my experience is very much hands-on. I've been a landlord for probably way longer than I ever wanted to be, but I had just a hard time selling properties in the beginning. I just held on to them. I thought I could make it work, but in the process, the good thing is I learned a lot, and I have statistics and I have numbers to back up my information. So the two things that will kill your profits as a landlord is first, tenant turnover. That means the more you tenants leave and come and leave and come and leave and come, the more money you're going to lose. Now, unless you make it a vacation rental, but long-term tenants with leases, the more you have of those, the less money you're going to make. So you want to keep tenants in there as long as possible, as long as they're good tenants, and not have them leave every year. So the second thing that's going to kill your profit, and it's even worse than a tenant not paying their rent, it's worse than tenant turnover, is if a tenant trashes your place. And I'm going to tell you from 19 years of experience, 19 years, and it doesn't matter if you have a property manager, it doesn't matter how good of a checkup you do on the tenants, what their credit score is, it does not matter. There's of course certain guidelines, and that's going to be the subject of another video, but most of the time your tenant, there probably, I'd say maybe 7 or 8 out of 10 tenants will either not pay on time, or you have to chase them for the rent every freaking month, or they will trash your place. And most times it's both of those. In my 19 years of experience, and I've had this discussion with somebody yesterday, and they asked me, in my 19 years of being a landlord of many properties, there's only been one time where a tenant has taken exceptional care of my property, and this kept it super nice and super clean, but in the end I had to evict them because they didn't pay the rent. So that's the only time. Usually they will not take care of your place and they will not pay the rent. The ones that do, there's actually a good amount of tenants that will pay the rent, and they'll pay it pretty much most of the time on time. However, they will still trash your place, or at least not keep it to your standards. So here's a couple of things that you can do about finding the better set of tenants if you want to be a landlord yourself. Now, if you have a property management company, they'll have their own procedures, but even so, you as the owner are responsible. You cannot push all your responsibilities over to a property manager, especially if you want to stay profitable. So some of the things that you can do, and some of the things that you can do is definitely run a credit check. If you don't have an application from a tenant that wants to rent your place, don't just give them a lease. You need to have an application. The application needs to have a social security number, it needs to have information where they work, so you can track them down if there's any outstanding rent later on, if there's a judgment against them. But you also need to basically check their references. Make sure you call previous landlords, check out and see what they've said about these tenants. Now, nobody's obligated to say anything bad about a tenant to a future landlord. However, they can abstain from making a comment at all, and then you can make your own judgment. I've just recently rented a place actually from brand new landlords. This is actually their first house. They've only lived there for a year, and then they moved away and they rented it to me. I did them a favor to take the place over quickly so they can make their money. But there's a lot of hassling going on right now, and these landlords are just not understanding that I'm about to walk out the door and they're gonna have to learn the lesson the hard way of what it's like to have a tenant that's gonna trash your place and not pay the rent on time. Of course, the first thing is you want to have your money on time, as much as possible on time, most every month, within that little grace period that you have, 3 or 4 days of the first of the month when it's due. But if you have a tenant, even if they pay timely, if they trash your place, that's going to be much more expensive than not having your rent payment for a month or maybe a little bit late. So 2 things you need to consider. If you have a tenant that pays your rent on time or early, keep that tenant around. But second, most important, is make sure that they keep track of the property. Now, if your tenant uses the property for other than personal use, for example for a vacation rental, you just about hit the jackpot, because the place is going to be constantly cleaned, it's always going to be taken care of, maintenance is always going to be updated, and there's going to be money coming in without any problems to pay your rent payments. So before you say no to a tenant that wants to use your property as a vacation rental, just consider those two facts. The two things that will kill your profit as a landlord are constant tenant turnover and a tenant trashing your place. And there you have it. Those are the 2 points I wanted to make with this video. Don't keep the good ones around, and make sure they don't trash your place. So, of course, paying rent on time is also important, but it's one of the 3 pillars, I guess, to having a good tenant. Somebody that pays the rent on time, doesn't trash your place, and doesn't leave. So for the rest of the show, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the rules of engagement, tips, tricks from master property management that I've learned at a real estate conference that I went to recently. And I hope you're bearing with me here on this Valentine's Day. I'm going to play you another quick song here and get my notes ready on that, and we're going to talk about that. And of course, today is Valentine's Day, and I hope you haven't forgotten it's Valentine's Day. Go get those flowers, go get those chocolates. And the song that I'm going to play you now is one that's familiar probably to everybody. It's The Power of Love by Huey Lewis and the News. And here we go. And that was Huey Lewis and the News, The Power of Love. Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you for tuning into Real Estate Real Talk with myself, Julia M. Spencer. We're talking about property management and some of the tips that I can give you. Some of them I've actually already mentioned in the video and previously and also on other shows, but the first thing here, rules of engagement, tips and tricks for property managers. Make sure you have your pen ready, your paper, write that down. No carpet. I can't stress this enough. Carpet does not belong in rental properties. I am very sorry if anybody disagrees with me. That is just the rule. That is the rule, and is not debatable whatsoever. I can't tell you how many carpets I've replaced in my lifetime. In fact, I remember even thinking that I've lived in my own house for maybe like 8 or 9 years at the time, and I never had to replace the carpet. In that time frame, I think there was maybe a 10 or 20 carpet replacements that I've done on rental properties. This was in the very beginning, and I learned my lesson really quickly. I was like, I'm done with carpet. No more carpet. Carpet's not very hygienic, not very sanitary, especially if you have tenants that have pets. So carpet is a big no-no. If you are considering buying a rental property or you own one, and of course there's always exceptions to this rule, make sure you get rid of the carpet. You'll thank me later. Another thing that some of the masters of master property managers that I spoke to at this conference talked about was to make sure that you have a non-refundable pet deposit if you accept pets. Now, I can tell you right now from experience, it's going to be very difficult for you to find tenants that have no pets, good ones. It's very rare that people don't have pets anymore these days, so you just kind of count with the fact that you're going to have to accept some pets. But if you do, make sure you charge them a non-refundable pet deposit. This will cover damages and any kind of carpet replacements, as we just spoke of, and other things. And another thing that is kind of new to the scene of how to write leases is to actually charge pet rent. In a place where I live right now, and I'm actually renting, I own a bunch of property in this town, but I do rent. In a place that I rent, they do require pet rent. And I have a pet, obviously. I have a cat. And they charge me, I think it's like $9 a month for my pets, which is acceptable. It's not very much. So, and you can put that up and down depending on how many pets, what kinds of pets and things. But that's definitely a really good tip that I would recommend for you to incorporate in your leases if you're the owner managing your own properties or if you are a property manager. Another thing that some of the masters talked about is to make sure that whenever you paint a place that you have the color scheme saved somewhere, that you have some sort of, basically what that means, you have some sort of samples of some of the colors that you used on the walls, and then for the trim and everything else. So you don't have to constantly have to re-gas when you have to redo something and touch up. And I've seen, and here, case in point, you'll laugh about this, but one of the places that I rented actually in my neighborhood used it as a vacation rental. The tenants or the owners actually did not know of such a thing as saving their color scheme, so they kind of just bought some color that they thought matched. And it was just a blotchy little mess of a house. I mean, it really looked like somebody had measles inside the house on the walls. There was little spots everywhere and little dots, and it was just, the colors didn't match, so it just looked horrible. And at that point, you pretty much have to repaint the whole inside. And when I moved out of that house and new tenants moved in, that's exactly what they did. So there's no way to mask that with furniture or anything. It looked horrific. So save your color scheme somewhere so you know you have the paint color scheme to touch up your walls in a professional way so it doesn't look half done. Another thing that would be really recommendable to property managers would be to incorporate a rental guarantee for the first 2 years. So basically, if somebody rents your place, of course, you always hope that it's a good tenant, that they sign your lease for 2 years at least, not just 1 year. Now, of course, you're going to have difficulty getting rid of them for those 2 years if it's a bad tenant, but hopefully you'll follow the rules of engagement of properly checking their credit and their references and everything else, and it wouldn't be such a big deal for them to sign a 2-year lease. Another thing to incorporate in your lease would be to visit a property at least twice a year. I have been very guilty of not doing that. I'm one of the poster childs of omitting to do that. There's been houses that I haven't even been to in probably this one house, I can say I haven't been there in 8 years. And when I finally did go there, I ended up selling that house. And I did go in there after we were already on contract and I was selling it. And I walked in there and it just, I can't believe anybody actually would sign a contract to buy it. That's how bad it was. And I should have walked in there many, many years ago and checked on the cleanliness and the fact that we had obviously some repairs to do, but I didn't do that. And so, accordingly, my sales price was lower than I probably could have gotten. So there's my lesson learned. Make sure you visit your properties twice a year. Incorporate that in your contract. Make sure, of course, you give your tenants notice. Usually, it's customary to give them 48-hour notice. And make sure that you go on business hours or normal hours or pre-agreed hours with the tenant. Don't just show up whenever and say, hey, I'm here. I'm inspecting your property now. You can't do that. You know, that you're trespassing. They have possession and you actually be going against the law if you did that. So another thing that some of the masters had talked about was to respond to every email and phone call each day. And I'm also very guilty of that. When I managed my own properties, I didn't always respond to tenants right away, didn't call them back right away. And I personally don't even like being on the phone. But if you do hire a property manager to do this work for you, make sure that that's one of their rules of engagement. Some of the things that they follow is to respond to every email and every phone call each day. And that kind of gives the tenant the feeling that actually there is somebody at the other end of the line taking care of them if there's an emergency or something. And so it's a really good practice to incorporate if you are a property manager and are managing multiple properties, or if you're a landlord and an owner and you're doing this for your own properties or maybe for somebody else. So let's talk a little bit more about the rules of engagement. We have only a few minutes left here, so I'm not sure I'll get through all of them, but I'll try my best. Another thing that a lot of property managers do these days, they actually submit the actual invoices from vendors, the actual receipts, to the owner, and they actually charge a markup. Anything that a property manager has arranged to be repaired at your house, they should send you the receipt from the actual vendor, not something that they produced, and show you the markup, how much they charged in addition to the vendor's price to you as the owner for a certain repair or a maintenance issue or something else. And that should actually be disclosed in the invoice. This is something as an owner that you can check, that you can ask for. Something you should do as a property manager also. So transparency and communication is key. That also builds trust between you, the owner, the landlord, and the actual person that is owning the property, so and the property manager. So you make sure that everybody has good communication. Another cool thing that some of the property managers, the masters, have said, this is a new thing since we have social media these days around so much. The cool thing is to basically make a YouTube video on that particular property and basically show the top 5 maintenance issues that could go wrong with that particular property. And it's so easy to do these days. You grab your cell phone, go into the house, your own property, and kind of just make a video. Hey, this is how you change your air filter. This is how you turn off the water if there's a leak and water is all over the place. This is how you do this or that. And then you just basically put those maintenance issues on there so that if there's an emergency, that the tenant, if they have watched the YouTube video, of course, can immediately remedy the situation. So first off, they can maybe fix it, and second off, if not, they can at least alleviate any kind of damages that are being caused by maybe water free-flowing and stuff like that. And you can actually require your tenants to watch that video and agree to do those things that are on that video prior to having a signed lease with them. I think that's a great idea. I should have done that too. That's something that really, really every property manager involved, good property managers, should definitely incorporate in their leases. And a lot of times this is also very important because a lot of people that are renting these days are millennials. They just don't know. They don't know how to maintain a house. People haven't taught them. The generation of today is not a doer self. Well, again, my opinion, good thing I read the disclaimer in the beginning, but they definitely need some education on how to maintain a home. And I fall into that category as well. Of course, I've learned over the years the hard way, but I know a lot of people that don't know how to change an air filter in an HVAC system, for example. The easiest thing ever, but people don't know you need to change that every 30 days or else you have issues with the AC system. So another thing that property managers have recommended is the fact that it's very good to try to help the tenants do stuff over the phone sometimes. And a lot of property managers will have 24/7 call numbers where somebody will answer the phone and they'll walk you through as a tenant on what you should do to fix whatever the issue is. And it could be anything. Like, say, I have these issues all the time because I have Airbnb rentals in this town. I certainly don't want to drive to them when somebody doesn't know how to turn on an air conditioning or how to set the TV to whatever channel that they want to watch because somebody reset it to a different input for their smartphone. I want to be able to do all this on the phone so I don't have to go there. And you can also incorporate that for a property manager. So those are some of the key points that definitely were made at that real estate conference. They were really good points. I'm going to put this recorded show also on the WRUU website. You can check it out here in the next day or two and listen to it if you haven't had a chance to write down all those points. Now, unfortunately, one of the things is that property management is still very local type of business. So there is, as of yet, no national property management company yet. And, maybe it's a good business idea. It's not something I want to get into, but, maybe it's something that you want to get into. Another last thing is when you get to the point where you just have to evict a tenant, and I've had to do this several times, a bit sad thing, but it does happen. Figure out some way to either incorporate in your lease a cash for keys type resolution to an eviction. So you basically, give them a little bit of money so they give you the keys and you just avoid the whole eviction process because it takes a lot of time and money. And I've never even thought of that. I thought at the point where we get to an eviction, a tenant doesn't want to talk to me anyway, so we're in court and it's bad. So, but there's alternatives to eviction. Cash for keys is one of them. So you can incorporate that also in your leases and also, keep an open ear to talk to your tenants when it gets to that point. So in any case, I hope this show was educational for you. It is always my goal to make you a smarter real estate investor or real estate owner, and hopefully a smarter property manager, if not for yourself or then for others, and a more informed landlord and user of property management services. Now, my name is Julia M. Spencer. You can reach me at realestate@juliamspencer.com. You've been listening to Real Estate Real Talk, and I am on Wednesdays at noon. Feel free to send me comments, questions, suggestions, or if you want me to make another show about a specific topic, just feel free to suggest that to me. Send me an email. And I'm going to finish my show here today because we only have a few more minutes, unfortunately. Sadness, I have to leave. I'll finish my show with the quintessential happy love song to me. I'm honored to play this song here on the show today. It's a song that's very, very old and very dear to my heart, actually. And it is by Buddy Holly from 1957, one of the most influential creative forces in early rock and roll. So thank you, Savannah listeners, for tuning in. I hope you have an awesome, fabulous rest of your Wednesday and week, and a fabulous Valentine's Day. Lots of flowers, chocolates, and cards to you all. I hope you can tune in again next week, Wednesday at noon. And so bye, everybody.
For your free guide to real estate investing, visit juliamspencer.com.